Cavalier actually started out as a vigilante with a prowess in fencing. He was even shown to be better than Batman at fencing. In fact, Batman decided to let him remain operating as a vigilante after clashing with him, but Cavalier was pulled into a life of crime after falling in love with a woman who was responsible for taking a life. In the end, he was forced to surrender and choose to give up his life for the woman that he loved. Honestly, while kind of a weird villain, I feel like Cavalier doesn't get enough love. His character and story could have evolved into something really cool, it could have continued, but instead, the only other time that we see him, primarily, other than of course Legends of the Dark Knight and Blackest Night, where he comes back to life because Blackest Night, is in a Suicide Squad series during the Prime continuity, where he's basically used as cannon fodder for the purpose of their story. Because Suicide Squad. What villains do you feel don't get enough love in the comics? Let me know down in the comments. Just because you are considered a low-level thug, or in Fleet Delmar's case a supposed freedom fighter, doesn't mean you can't rise above your rank and become something much greater. That is just what Fleet did. He ended up getting his hands on some alien tech that allowed him to move up to the next level when it came to his rank as a threatening and powerful Batman villain. He was supposedly apprehended by Batman years before, who had tormented him with fear gas as punishment for his crimes. This experience apparently led to him losing his eyes and becoming blind, which is why he decided to seize the alien tech and use it to get revenge. The helmet he wore granted him psychic powers, allowing him to read the minds of his opponent and counteract their attacks easily in a fight. The helmet also allowed him to absorb energy blasts, which at one point allowed Karma to take on both Black Lightning and Batman at the same time. Hush has managed to pull off some of the most horrific schemes over the years and gotten under Batman's skin many times. In Catwoman's skin even, quite literally, when he stole her actual beating heart. Thomas Elliot is not only a powerful villain because of his intense vendetta against the Wayne family and Batman, but because he also is often shown to have the skill and the strength to match Batman, as well as the cunning. He has taken Batman on in hand-to-hand combat and fared surprisingly well, and he's managed to set into motion outlandish plots like impersonating Bruce Wayne by giving himself plastic surgery to make himself look nearly identical, then capturing and threatening the real Bruce Wayne's life and threatening to disfigure him so that he could just permanently take his place. And yet still, Hush is one of Batman's lesser known villains, simply because he's really only had a few prominent moments in the comics. While Punchline might be new on the scene, she did go toe-to-toe with Harley Quinn, herself known for being a pretty deadly and unstoppable villain when she wants to be. Hello, Harley Quinn did take on the Holy Trinity all together at one point, and Punchline, when she faced Harley Quinn, she came out on top. Surprisingly. Punchline sliced Harley Quinn's throat and left her for dead in the sewers below Gotham during Joker War. But of course, Harley would recover because she is still Harley frickin' Quinn. Still, Punchline's victory was surprising for her being such a new and unseasoned character and baddie. So I think we learned then that she is a force to be reckoned with and is definitely a character to keep our eyes on. Punchline seems to enjoy fighting with stiletto daggers and dreaming up her own deadly brews of poison, even creating her own special brew of Joker venom during Joker War for Batman, which gave him his own pretty bad trip. Pretty much everything about Owlman from Earth 3's crime syndicate is surprising and intriguing. He is the evil counterpart to Batman, but is not Earth 3's version of Bruce, technically. Instead, he is Thomas Wayne Jr., who on his Earth was Bruce's elder brother. He himself plotted to kill his parents as he believed they were mismanaging the family's wealth, which of course would end up being his inheritance. In the end, Bruce refused to help Thomas and even attempted to convince him to not go through with his plot. So Thomas Jr., saddened, was ultimately forced to take his brother's life, having had much higher hopes for Bruce. Thomas would then become Owlman and use a combination of fear, wealth, and influence to take control of Gotham. Still missing his brother at this point, he decided to find someone else to fill that hole in his heart. After meeting Dick Grayson at the circus, Thomas orchestrated the death of Grayson's parents in secret and then offered him support and a home, manipulating him into becoming his sidekick, Talon. Honestly, I love Dr. Phosphorus and I think he does not get enough love. One, he's got such a cool and unique design, and two, I also kind of feel for him in regards to like his origin story. Dr. Phosphorus was once a nuclear scientist, Dr. Alexander Sartorius, who just wanted to bring nuclear power to the people of Gotham. And yeah, I know back in the day we were all concerned about nuclear power, but it is one of the cleanest forms of energy, okay? So I don't think really he was doing anything too sinister here. However, he was resisted at almost every turn as the people of Gotham protested his efforts. Eventually though, he was able to build his plant, but he was simply forced to build further away from the city on the sea. The plant tragically did have a meltdown, which which resulted in him being transformed into the monstrous-looking Dr. Phosphorus. Sartorius, I believe, saw Gotham as the enemy since they had so vehemently opposed him, forcing him to relocate his plant, and so he decided to get revenge on the city, but of course he was stopped by Batman, and would be thereafter. Kite Man is often relegated to the C-list villains in the DC universe. He's often considered one of Batman's lamest villains, and yet via the Harley Quinn animated series, he saw kind of a revitalization of his character, with him even getting a solid fan base due to how he was depicted in the show. Kite Man, while an all-around good guy in the animated series, is still considered to be a villain in the animated universe and the comics, albeit still of course a C-list one. And yet in the animated show, I feel like what makes us love him so much is the fact that he's working hard to try and make a name for himself, and that's kind of a huge part why I think people love him in the show. That and the fact that he seems fairly comfortable with just who he is, even though he isn't necessarily, a top tier villain and he knows it. It doesn't mean that he doesn't try, and it doesn't mean that he is ashamed of who he is, or even his gimmick. Hell yeah, Kite Man. Brother Eye in Future's End is an entity that takes over the world. Brother Eye was initially created to be a hero protecting the world from any threat. In Future's End, the artificial intelligence was created by Batman and Mr. Terrific, but its prime directive ended up kind of corrupting it. In DC's main continuity, Batman created the AI to keep an eye on the Justice League, who he had basically lost trust in at that point. Brother Eye came to realize that humanity's greatest threat was actually, well, humanity itself, and sought for complete control of the people of planet Earth, seeing this as the only way to protect humans from themselves. It's that age-old AI warning story. Be careful what you wish for. Creating AI technology may one day result in that tech rising up and realizing just how awful humans can really be, and either hold you prisoner for the rest of your life, or ultimately just kill you, because maybe the world would be better off that way. You know that age-old story. Peacekeeper 01 is a character who has made a few appearances in the comics, still being relatively new. He was introduced during Tynion IV's run and was one of the people recruited by the Magistrate in Gotham to keep peace in the city. He was in fact one of many Peacekeepers recruited, but most importantly, he was of course the first, 01. Peacekeeper 1 was also unique in the sense that he was recruited specifically to take Batman's place as Gotham's protector. Sean Mahoney was originally an aspiring police officer, coming from a long line of those who worked in the service. However, due to a troubled youth and some serious anger problems, I'd say, he was refused by the GCPD when he applied, instead ending up working at Arkham. Following the events of A-Day, he would be recruited by Simon Saint, who of course was working for the Magistrate, to act as the first candidate for the Peacekeeper program. Sean, as Peacekeeper 01, possesses cybernetic enhancements which make him strong, tough, and a formidable opponent whose tech allows him to learn and improve every time he fights someone. This was one whose reappearance even caught me by surprise during the Three Jokers story. While I am not sure if we know where that story falls in continuity yet, in continuity, outside of continuity, it was a still long-awaited read that I quite enjoyed, and which brought back a villainous sidekick of old that I did not know how much I really missed until I saw him return. Gaggy is Gagsworth A. Gagsworthy, and he is an old-school sidekick of the Jokers from way back in the day, before he was ever with Harley Quinn. In fact, at one point, Gaggy also returned to get revenge on Harley for taking his place at the Joker's side, but that happened, I believe, during Gotham City Sirens. In Three Jokers, however, Gaggy returns as one of the Three Jokers' sidekicks. However, his comeback is quite short-lived, as he ends up being devoured by a Joker shark. Rest in peace, Gaggy. What a tragic way to go. That's about it. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight. Until next time, you stay nerdy.